What if you can connect all your studio equipment through one central hub? With the Xbay you can. Anatal Electronics is proud to present the Xbay 256, a digitally programmable analog patch bay. With all signals going through the Xbay, the options are almost limitless. Every output to every input. You can seamlessly patch and route all your hardware into the mix without touching a wire. You can record sessions, you can do parallel processing, you can make mults, you can focus on your creative process. The Xbay has its own operating system called AOS. With a matrix view and a chain view, you have the best of both worlds in connecting your hardware. You can use AOS as a standalone application or on any device that has a browser. So Mac, Windows, iOS, Android and even Linux. For that matter, you can use it from anywhere in the world. The Xbay doesn't need a fan. We've implemented a feature called matrix decomposition. This means that the signal travels over fewer components. Fewer components means less heat. Less heat means no fan. And no fan means no noise in your studio. Let's take a closer look at AOS. When you have connected all your studio equipment to the Xbay via the D-sub connectors on the back of the unit, it's time to open up AOS for the first time. When you do that, you will see a blank canvas. That is because you have to add your own devices in the Settings tab. You see the Settings tab on the top here. If we open it up, a new tab opens and we see the device library. We see devices in use, which is empty, obviously, and we see a general tab. If you click on the device library tab and you fill that with your own gear, it's time to press the Add Device Specification button. A window will open up and you can fill out the type of device, the name of the device, and so on. So I have an Apogee interface, it's an interface. I will leave the text color, I will leave the background color. I can fill out a connector if I want to, I can fill out a node, and I can make my own inputs and outputs. If I press the Add Port Specification button, an input will appear. If I continue to do that, more inputs will emerge. That same goes for the outputs. If I add one port too many, I can delete it by double-clicking the Delete button. If I'm happy with what I made, I can save it and I see an Apogee interface on top of my device list. After you added all your devices, it's time to go to the Devices in Use tab. If I'm on the Devices in Use tab, I can tell AOS which device I want where. In my case, I want the interface on patch point number 1. Then I can manually choose channels, or I can select the asterisk and it will increment all the channels. I do that with my inputs and my outputs likewise, and I have my first patch points occupied. I can do that with the rest of my devices till all patch points are filled. I can also do that with my console, and like this I can really occupy the whole devices in use section in a very short amount of time. When we've done this, we can close the tab and we can look at the matrix and really start connecting devices and patch away. Two of the main features in AOS are the chain view and my personal favorite, the matrix view. When we look at the matrix edits for the second time, it's much more interesting. On the left side we have our outputs and on the top side we have our inputs. We can switch this if we want, but for now I leave this as it is. If I want to have the output of my console number 1 to my interface number 1, I just follow the line, I click with the mouse and I have my first connection. I can do this for every channel that I want. That's how easy it is to connect one device to another. You can also connect outputs to multiple inputs. For instance, my output number 1 of the console can also go to compressor number 1 and compressor number 2. In the matrix view, you also have more information. On the right side, you see the patch history. The patch history is your history, and you can just press on one of the instances to go back to that instance. We also have a device list, and you can show or hide several devices. You can only hide devices that are not connected, but devices that are connected will always show. You can also hide individual devices. For instance, a reverb that you're not using, by just clicking on the eye, and the unit will disappear from view in the matrix. If you undo this, it will appear again. Another function in the matrix window is the snapshot function in the bottom right corner. I can make a setup, I can add it, I can give it a name, and I have my snapshot ready. For instance, I have my console out going into my interface. I will name this snapshot 1. I will add it. Then I will make some other adjustments. For instance, I will hook up to compressors. I will add this and name this snapshot 2. And I can switch between the two and have my settings. These settings can also be recalled via MIDI notes, and this can be a very interesting way of using AOS in your studio. Another way of connecting your devices is the chain view. If we look at the matrix view, you can see my outputs of my console going into the interface. In the chain view, it looks like this, the console going into the interface. If I now want to insert, for instance, a compressor, I can press my mouse, a drop-down menu pops up, and I can choose compressor number 1 with input and output number 1. If I now go back to the matrix view, we can see that my console output number 1 goes into the compressor, but the output of the compressor also goes into the input of the interface. So this is done automatically and saves you a lot of time. When we go back to the chain view, we have some more options. For instance, if I have my compressor and I want to check the signal with or without the compressor, I have the option to mute the compressor. So I press my X and it's muted. You can see that the compressor name now has a strike through. If I want to insert it again and make it active, it's unmuted and the compressor is active again. I can also delete it by pressing the minus symbol, and I can also replace it with another instrument or piece of gear. Another function in the chain view is that I can save my chain. For instance, my channel 1, I click on the top part of the chain. I can choose mono or stereo, but I can also choose save as. And I save this as chain 1. If I press enter, you will see on the left hand side a new setting, which is chain 1. Now if I clear my whole setting list and I press chain 1 on the left side, I can see my chain 1 reappears. This way you can create different setups from previously saved presets. You can make it as complicated as you want, but it's just another way of making the matrix view and the chain view work together like a charm. As mentioned before, you can control AOS with different devices. I have the standalone version on my MacBook and I have Safari on my iPad. For this I need the IP address. In the left hand corner you can find it. Just copy the address, fill it in your browser in your iPad, and if you're on the same network, the connection is automatically made. Every change I make on my MacBook will show up in my iPad and vice versa. A very handy tool, and it also gives you the freedom of controlling AOS or the Xbay from anywhere in your studio, as long as you carry a mobile device, which can even be an iPhone. I will now make connections on my iPad which automatically show on my MacBook. So for instance, I make my console connect to my interface just by pressing and tapping the connection that I want, and you can see how fast and easy this is, and instantly it will show up on my MacBook. Finally, I would like to show you a complex setup with the Xbay in a real-life situation as we have here. We have a lot of outboard gear we can easily connect to each other just by means of AOS and the Xbay. It's a matter of drawing lines instead of plugging cords. This was a brief introduction of the Xbay 256, a high-end analog patch bay controllable via USB, Wi-Fi or the internet. It uses no AD/DA conversion, has zero latency and no fan noise at all. Xbay 256 is a real time saver for any professional studio.